On Christmas Eve, my father opened the massive oak door of our Greenwich mansion and threw my single suitcase onto the frozen stone steps. My little sister Madison stood right behind him, arms folded, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Let's see how you survive now, big sis," she sneered, her voice dripping with poison. I dragged that suitcase through the thick, icy fog. No money, no car, nothing left except the worn leather boots on my feet, the only thing keeping me from frostbite. I collapsed onto a snow-dusted park bench, shaking so hard my teeth wouldn't stop chattering. That's when she appeared. An old woman, her feet bare and turning a bruised purple, her thin coat no match for the wind. She looked like the cold had already claimed her. Without thinking twice, I knelt down, untied my own boots, the last warm thing I owned, and slipped them onto her frozen feet. They were too big, but they were something. She grabbed my freezing hands, looked straight into my eyes, and whispered, "Kindness like this, it changes things." Then she walked away and vanished into the fog. Exactly 1 hour later, a fleet of black luxury cars rolled up in perfect silence, blocking the entire street. The same woman stepped out of the middle car. Same face, but now she wore a floor-length cashmere coat, her hair in an elegant twist, diamonds flashing at her wrist. She walked straight to me, smiled, and said only one sentence. "I've been waiting for someone like you, Jessica. Trust me, keep watching. What happens next will change everything." That afternoon, the Christmas party was in full swing when I arrived. The house looked like a magazine cover. A 20-foot fir tree in the 2-story foyer, white orchids everywhere, caterers in black ties setting the dining table for 30. My father, Mark, was opening a $1,000 bottle of wine like it was a Tuesday. My mother, Kimberly, was fastening a new pearl necklace that definitely wasn't there last month. And Madison was twirling in a backless designer dress, flashing a massive engagement ring on her left hand. Ryan, my ex-boyfriend of 5 years, stood behind her, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door. "Hey everyone," I started, trying to force a smile. "Tough day." Madison spun around, her eyes wide with fake concern. "Oh my God, Jessica, what is it now?" she gasped, loud enough for the caterers to hear. "Did you get fired again? What is this, the 3rd time in 4 years? He turned to Mom. "Remember when she got let go from that tech startup for not being a culture fit?" Mom's lips tightened into a thin line. Dad didn't even look up from his wine. I felt my face burn hot. It was a company-wide layoff. They eliminated my entire department. Madison just waved her new ring in my direction. Ryan just sold his crypto startup. $45 million. Investors are lining up to give him more. My father finally set his glass down with a sharp click. "Jessica, we need to talk." He didn't ask me to sit. He never did when it was bad news. He told me straight-faced and cold that he'd amended the family trust last month. All of it, the entire $75 million in principal, was now in Madison's name only. Irrevocable. Signed, notarized, filed. He said I was 30 years old and it was time I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. Mom added, "We can't keep funding a lifestyle that doesn't produce results," as if my marketing salary had ever paid for their orchids or Madison's shopping sprees in Paris. I just stood there, my mouth open, trying to process that my own parents had just legally and financially erased me while I was still standing in their foyer. Madison pulled out her phone, already recording. "This is gold," she laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "Big sis comes home broke on Christmas Eve. Say something for my followers, Jessica." I looked at my father, my voice barely a whisper. "You're serious?" He met my eyes for the first time all night. They were cold. Final. "You have 20 minutes to pack what you need," he said. "Security will let you back in tomorrow to get the rest if you make an appointment." My mother wouldn't even look at me. She just busied herself adjusting a gold ornament on the tree. That was it. In under 30 minutes, I went from daughter to trespasser in the only home I had ever known. We were back in the present, inside the warm, silent cabin of the lead car. The woman beside me, Isabella Rossi, watched the city lights blur past. "My security team followed you from the moment you left that house," she said, her voice calm and steady. "They watched you walk for miles. They watched you sit on that bench. And they watched you give away the only thing protecting your feet from the ice." The car turned through a set of massive iron gates, gliding up a long tree-lined drive to an estate that looked more like a palace. Inside, a fire crackled in a hearth big enough to stand in. My late husband and I built a global logistics empire, she explained, handing me a cup of hot tea. When he passed, I converted it all into a private foundation. It's currently valued at $8.5 billion. I just stared, the number felt unreal. Every year on this date, she continued, I do the same thing. I dress as someone who has nothing and I walk the streets. I'm looking for one person. Someone who still chooses kindness when they have every reason not to. Most years I go home disappointed. This year I found you. She paused, her gaze intense. There's a complication, Jessica. I'm dying. The doctors have given me a year, maybe two. I have no children, no heirs. When I'm gone, a board of strangers will control everything I've built. I won't have that. She leaned forward. I want someone who understands what it feels like to be thrown away, to decide how we help the next person who gets thrown away. I'm offering you a position. A 5-year apprenticeship. At the end of that time, you are the person I believe you are. The entire foundation becomes yours to run. Not as a gift, she said, her eyes fierce. As a responsibility. I accepted. The next morning I was thrown into the deep end. A formidable woman named Camila Vargas, Isabella's chief operating officer, handed me a stack of financial reports as thick as a phone book. Welcome to boot camp, she said, her expression unreadable. The next 6 months were a blur of brutal, relentless training. 6 a.m. workouts with a former Special Forces trainer. 7:30 breakfast meetings where I learned to dissect complex tax documents and global investment portfolios. 9 to 6 was spent shadowing Isabella in boardrooms at their World Trade Center offices, listening to billionaires argue over philanthropic strategy and impact metrics. Evenings were spent in the estate's library, studying 2 decades of grant archives, learning from every success and, more importantly, every failure. Isabella didn't want another socialite playing philanthropist. She wanted a warrior. We don't fund projects that look good in a press release, she'd say, her voice like steel. We fund projects that rewire the system. My first real test came in July. Isabella called me into her office. On the table was a single file. This is a $1 million discretionary grant portfolio, she said. You have 1 week to vet these 3 finalist organizations and decide how to allocate the funds. Present your recommendation to the board next Friday. I was determined to prove myself. I spent every waking hour on due diligence, but I was overeager. I was charmed by the charismatic founder of a tech-for-good startup. His pitch was flawless, his projections were beautiful, and he spoke passionately about changing the world. I ignored the warning signs in his financial statements, the small inconsistencies that Camila had taught me to spot. I put the entire $1 million into his project. 3 months later, it imploded. The founder vanished, the technology was fraudulent, and the media ran stories about how the Rossi Foundation had been duped. The public relations crisis was a nightmare. I walked into Isabella's office, expecting her to fire me or at least to fix it. Instead, she just looked at me. The board meeting is in 1 hour, she said calmly. You will go in there by yourself and you will explain to them exactly what happened and how you are going to clean up your own mess. The walk to that boardroom was the longest of my life. I faced them alone. I took full responsibility, outlined my mistakes with brutal honesty, and presented a 3-point plan to recover the foundation's reputation. It was the most humiliating and empowering hour of my life. I walked out bruised but not broken. I had failed, but I had survived. Isabella was waiting for me outside. For the first time she smiled. Good, she said. Now your real training can begin. I earned my stripes after that disaster. I learned humility. I learned to trust data over charisma. 6 months later, Isabella gave me my biggest challenge yet. It was a $50 million capital grant, the foundation's largest of the year. The choice was down to 2 projects. The first was a new state-of-the-art performing arts center in a wealthy suburb. It had celebrity endorsements, a gala committee filled with famous names, and guaranteed glowing press coverage. It was the safe, easy choice that would make the board look good. The second project was a massive expansion of a network of unsheltered youth resource centers in the city's poorest neighborhoods. It was complicated, messy, and offered 0 glamorous photo opportunities. The old me would have been swayed by the arts center. But the new me spent 2 weeks digging into the data. I ran demographic analyses, studied long-term economic impact projections, and spent 3 days visiting the existing youth centers, talking to the kids and the overworked staff. I built a case based on irrefutable facts. The youth centers would provide a measurable return on investment, breaking cycles of poverty and saving the city hundreds of millions in social services costs over the next decade. The Arts Center was just a beautiful building. I presented my findings to the board. I didn't talk about feelings, I talked about outcomes. I showed them charts and figures that proved the less glamorous choice was the only responsible one. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Isabella started to clap, a slow, deliberate applause. The board followed her lead. I had won. I had proven I was her true successor. I was in my new corner office looking down at the city, feeling for the first time like I truly belonged when my assistant buzzed. "Jessica," she said, her voice hesitant. "Your sister and a Mr. Ryan are here to see you. They don't have an appointment." My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen or heard from them in over a year. "Send them in," I said, my voice colder than I expected. They walked in looking like actors playing a part. Madison wore a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, a stark contrast to her usual flashy style. Ryan wore a suit that was a size too tight. They both had on practiced, apologetic smiles. "Jessica," Madison began, her voice soft and full of fake remorse. "We are so sorry. For everything." Ryan nodded vigorously. "We were awful. But Dad's in trouble. His investments. The crypto market collapsed. They might lose the house. We need your help." I leaned back in my chair, my face a mask of stone. "And?" Madison took a deep breath. "We need a $5 million loan. A bailout." I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment before I spoke. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice level and calm. "After you stood by and watched our father disinherit me, after you live-streamed my lowest moment for your own amusement, you're now here in my office asking me for $5 million? Madison's eyes welled up with practiced tears. "We have nowhere else to go, Jessica. It's for Mom and Dad." I opened a thin folder that Camila had placed on my desk an hour earlier. Inside were bank records, credit card statements, and social media posts from the past year. I turned the folder around so they could see. "According to this," I said, tapping a finger on a picture of them standing next to a new Lamborghini, "you spent the first $10 million of the trust in 6 months. A new car for each of you. A down payment on a penthouse in Miami. You paid influencers to promote worthless digital coins." Ryan stammered. "The market was... it was unpredictable." "No," I cut him off. "It was predictable greed. You didn't invest. You gambled. And you lost." I closed the folder. This foundation exists to help people who have fallen through the cracks, not people who set their own safety net on fire because they were bored. The answer is no. Madison's mask of sorrow vanished, replaced by a flash of pure rage. "You ungrateful bitch," she shrieked, pulling out her phone and hitting record. "You'll regret this." As my security team escorted them out, she put on the performance of a lifetime in the lobby, sobbing for her phone's camera, shouting about her cold-hearted billionaire sister who was letting their parents become homeless. The video hit social media and exploded. 10 million views in under 6 hours. The comments were a flood of sympathy for Madison and hatred for me. #Jessica Miller is over. Party was trending worldwide. Then the internet did what the internet does. Someone found and reposted the video Madison had filmed on Christmas Eve, the one where she laughed as I was thrown out of my home. Old classmates started sharing stories of Madison's cruelty in high school. A former employee of Ryan's leaked documents proving his crypto startup was a complete scam. The narrative flipped with breathtaking speed. The public saw them for who they really were. By midnight, their social media accounts were a toxic wasteland. The angry mob had turned, and their social downfall was as swift and total as their financial one. Their last remaining crypto funds evaporated overnight. They had tried to destroy my reputation and in the process had incinerated their own. The final blow came 2 months later. My father, in a desperate attempt to recoup their losses, had invested every last cent they had, including a second mortgage on the house, into a fund that promised impossible returns. Turned out to be a massive Ponzi scheme. When it collapsed, they lost everything. The house in Greenwich was seized by the bank. My parents, Madison and Ryan, ended up in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a rundown neighborhood, the kind of place they used to mock. The collection agencies were relentless. One rainy Thursday, they showed up at the foundation's lobby without an appointment. I agreed to see them one last time. They looked broken. My father was a ghost of the powerful man he used to be. My mother looked aged and frail. Madison wore no makeup, her eyes hollow. We sat in a small, sterile conference room. Jessica, my father began, his voice cracking. We were wrong. We know we don't deserve it, but please. We're going to be on the street. I said nothing. I simply opened another folder and slid 3 business cards across the table. The first is for a certified financial planner who specializes in bankruptcy, I said calmly. The second is for a free debt management course that the foundation funds. The third is for a family therapist who works on a sliding scale. My father stared at the cards as if they were poison. That's it, he whispered. After everything, you give us pamphlets? I finally stood up, looking each of them in the eye. You had $75 million and an entire lifetime of privilege. You made choices. You chose greed. You chose cruelty. You chose to stand by and watch. Those were your decisions. This is the consequence. My mother was openly weeping now. We're sorry, Jessica. We're so sorry. I believe you're sorry you got caught, I said, my voice void of emotion. But being sorry doesn't fix this. Taking responsibility does. Doing the work does. Madison just sobbed. You're enjoying this. You want us to suffer. I walked to the door and held it open. No, I said softly. I just refuse to pay for your suffering anymore. As security led them away, I didn't feel triumph or even satisfaction. For the first time in my life, when I thought about my family, I felt absolutely nothing at all. The emptiness was its own kind of peace. A blank slate. A beginning. The air was crisp and cold on the night we opened the harbor. It was the foundation's most ambitious project yet. A 4-story state-of-the-art facility providing 200 apartments, on-site medical care and job training for families experiencing homelessness. 3,000 people filled the plaza. The mayor was there. The governor was there. Isabella, looking elegant but frail, sat in the front row, giving me a small, proud nod. When they called my name, I walked to the podium. The microphone felt heavy in my hand. I looked out over the sea of faces, and in the back, huddled near a column, I saw them. My father, mother, and sister looking small and out of place. I took a deep breath. 1 year ago tonight, I began, my voice clear and steady, I was thrown out of the only home I'd ever known. I learned that night what it feels like when the people who are supposed to catch you are the ones who let you drop. A murmur went through the crowd. I continued, but I also learned something else on a freezing park bench. Real family isn't about blood. Real family is the stranger who chooses to see you when you feel invisible. Real family is the hand that reaches for you when you have nothing left to give in return. I gestured to the gleaming building behind me. This is the harbor. This is a place built on that idea. Every single person who walks through these doors will be told the same thing I needed to hear that night. You are not disposable. You are not alone. You are home. The applause was deafening. As it began to fade, I spoke one last time, my voice softer now. We open these doors for every person who has ever been told they don't belong. Especially for those who were told that by the people who were supposed to love them most. I looked directly at my family. My father's shoulders were shaking. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Madison stared at the ground. I held their gaze for a single silent moment. Then I stepped away from the podium. As the governor cut the ribbon, I walked down the steps. My family stood frozen as I approached. My father started to say my name, but I kept walking. I passed within 2 feet of them, my stride steady and unbroken. The massive glass doors of the harbor slid open automatically, spilling warm light onto the cold pavement. I stepped across the threshold and the doors slid silently shut behind me. I never looked back. Not out of anger, but out of acceptance. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to reopen the door that hurt you. Sometimes, it just means you finally have the courage to walk through a new one and let the old one stay closed for good.